Well, hello, Team Healthy. How are you doing today? Having a great day here in Waco, Texas. I tell you what, we have a beautiful day. Gus and I went out and took a little walk earlier today, and been sitting out on the patio some and doing a little reading and all. So here we are. I've got some really good questions that I'm wanting us to get into. Now, before I do, let me put in a little a promo kind of thing. I want you to remember that we have a special webinar that's coming up on May. It's Tuesday, May the 16th, live 1 o'clock Central Time, and it's about when the narcissist meets a people pleaser. And those of you who have been to my webinars or have purchased the webinars, you know that I had this really extensive PowerPoint presentation that I have. I've already got it put together, and then we'll have some guided questions and all like that. But it's something that it comes from my history of presenting seminars and workshops and things like that. And so I think you'll find it to be beneficial. So keep an eye out for our promos on that, and the Surviving Narcissism.tv website will have some information on that. So just know we have that coming up. Okay, there's something I want us to be aware of, and today I'm putting our topics, our questions, under the theme of the ongoing tension of being with a narcissist. One of the things that narcissists obviously want is they want control. They have a real strong sense of entitlement. They have a need to superimpose themselves over you, and therefore they want to be superior, and they don't take input at all. They're manipulative, etc. One of the things that I want you to be aware of is the role that the narcissist is wishing for you to play that allows them to keep their game going, so to speak. And that is, the more they can keep you off kilter with your emotions, and the more they can keep you responding with strain and tension and stress central to who you are in reaction to them, the more they say, see, this is why I need to be who I am. This is why I need to call the shots, because look at you. You don't have your act together. You're dysregulated. There's something really wrong with you. You need me to tell you what to do. You need me to more or less set the pace here. And certainly, I don't need to hear from anyone like you who has all of this emotional duress. So, what if we decided, well, here on Team Healthy, one of the things we do is we don't play into the narcissist games. I'm wanting you to have a real sense of education about who these people are and how they operate. There are obviously each person has their own uniqueness, but there are certain predictabilities that narcissists will bring to the equation. And the more you understand who they are and why they are the way they are, then it can keep you from getting pulled into the undertow, letting them establish your pace. The more tense you are, the more they will pounce on you. But what if you had a sense that says, you know what, I'm on to you, and I have my own way of thinking and being. I'm going that direction. So that's where I'm coming from today. Having said that, let's just dive right into the questions. And by the way, those of you who are new, some of you are going to be watching this live, and if you want to put your questions here on the live chat, that's fine. Most of you are going to be watching tape delayed, and you can put the questions in the comments section below, and know that I go through questions that come through every week, and that is what makes next week's program. And so go ahead and put your comments there. Okay, the first question we have here is this. This person says, after the mask is down, is it common to wonder if a number of things the narcissist said in the past were false? In other words, it's like, oh, I got to know that narcissistic person. It sounded like we're dealing with some covert. I got to know this person. They seemed to be okay. But over time, I began seeing behind that curtain. The mask came down, and I began realizing something's not right here. So, is it common to wonder if the narcissist said things in the past that were false? And then this person goes on to say, I've wondered about some of the things the narcissist said after I found out that person had a pattern of ongoing narcissistic traits. It seems like the narcissist has lost credibility for things that were said in the past and may have been believed at the time. It's hard to believe anything that was said in the past or in the present. Okay, so one of the things that begins to happen when you are engaging with a narcissistic person, especially if it's a narcissist of the covert variety, is they want to present themselves as being credible. They want to present themselves as being authoritative, but not in an overwhelming kind of way. They like to know who you are and what's going on with you so that they can get an inroad. And it's in retrospect, when you see that that's what they're doing, it's heartbreaking to think, you mean there was a manipulative switch that was turned on in them from day one and I just didn't even know that I was being played? And the answer is yes. You see, let's keep in mind that one of the primary elements of narcissism is living behind the shield of a false self. And one of in fact, I have an interview coming up with a psychologist, and he's going to talk with me about how much of narcissism is subconscious. That's going to be in 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. And it's fascinating to look into that. But one of the things that tends to happen is that narcissists, in their earlier developmental years, decided being open, being honest, being self-disclosing doesn't work out very well for me. And so what they do is they put up that mask, as she mentioned. They live behind a false self. It's like, well, if I can learn how to play the game so that if I can get along with the people and the systems that are in front of me, I'm going to come out okay. And so they bring that into their adult years. And you'd like to think that as an adult, they can think, when I was a kid, I used to think like a kid and I was dodging the authorities and all of that. But I'm not a kid anymore. I'm an adult and I can learn how to have a much more mature way of engagement. You'd like to think that. But part of narcissism is remaining in a childish, immature, what I call pre adolescent form of thinking. And these adult narcissists will come toward you with half truths. They'll come toward you with a real good exterior for a while. But over time, you begin realizing that they whittle away at your legitimacy. They gaslight you, and that's part of them elevating themselves at your expense. For example, when you say, I think that I'm going to handle this situation in this fashion instead of that fashion, the gaslighting can be, why would you do that? Don't you remember we talked about this a couple of weeks ago and that's not going to work? Or, anything to keep you off kilter. And so this person asks, it's hard to believe that it's hard to believe that anything they said in the past was true. And the point is right. They want to go ahead and sidle up next to you and let you think that they're on your team. When over time you're going to see that what they'll do is they'll whittle away, and that's part of the tension on the inside. So I wanted to lead with this question because I want to underscore, when you are dealing with a strongly narcissistic person, you're dealing with someone who can't tell truth from fiction hardly. The false self. And I always say, emphasize false. False is not the same thing as truth. Okay. And so, yes, know that part of them coming toward you is coming from a position of defensiveness, cover up, mystique, anything to keep you from seeing who they really are. Okay. Even though, and of course, part of it is they want to transfer the tension into you when in fact they're carrying their own chaos and tension. Now, this next person is trying to figure out what's going on with that narcissistic individual, and I have a sneaking suspicion it's happening, the figuring out part. This person says, "How can I tell if my partner is a narcissist?" And then listen to all of this and see what you come up with. This person says, "We fight constantly over everything. He's destroyed most of my belongings because I make him mad. And he claims I'm always lying to him, even though I'm being 100% transparent and honest." I doubt that you're 100% because there are times when it's like, bother, but I get what you're saying. And then she goes on to say, "He smashed my gaming system and drenched all my games in oil, constantly telling me I'm a failure because I didn't finish college." And then that lead question, how can I tell if a person is a narcissist? Okay, multiple things. Let's see if we can go through a checklist here. And I'm going to make the assumption you may be a bit new to the game here, and I'm glad you're here with us. Okay. First, when we talk about is a person a narcissist, we're talking about high control. See any control in this? Check. We're also talking about low empathy. And when we say low empathy, we're talking about someone who couldn't really care less about knowing you and understanding you from your vantage point. They're too busy trying to push their agenda into you. Okay, with basically what you said, check on that one. Another thing that we know about narcissists is they operate with my reality only. We call it alternate reality. In other words, the rest of the world out there may think here's the way it needs to be, but I say, this is what I think is best, and it doesn't matter what the objective truth says. We go with my reality. And so this person says, I'm the one that's got the problems, and I'm the one who's doing all the lying, etc. In other words, they're not looking at truth. Check. The need to be superiority. That's part of narcissism. Do you see that in this? Oh, yeah. When they do all this condescending, check. The attitude of entitlement. It's like, no, you deserve, I deserve for you to do what my bidding. You're supposed to get over here and do what I say. Check. Pathological defensiveness. Check. So when a person says, how can I tell if a person is narcissistic? Let's underscore narcissism is not just some sort of pop psychology word that we just use whenever we don't like someone. Narcissism is an identifiable pattern of life. Now, I'm going to take this person's comments just a little bit further and underscore the best way you can determine if a person is narcissistic is to watch how they manage conflict. And you'll notice that this person, when he or she was asking the question, was more or less saying, whenever frustration or annoyance or irritability comes, I didn't hear anything at all about saying, hey, let's sit down and talk. Let's collaborate and let's each have an airing of our own thoughts and feelings and see if we can find a meeting of the minds. You're not hearing any of that in this description that I just read. Instead, in conflict, narcissists will show their colors really strongly. Now, when we say that there's an ongoing tension that you maintain in your reaction to the narcissist, they can be so ugly and so dysfunctional in the way that they approach their differences from you that it keeps you all keyed up. And you'll notice in the video that I put out last Monday about how to baffle a narcissist, one of the things that I strongly encourage is for you to figure out what their game is and what their goals are, thinking, I don't feel any particular need to play that game. And that baffles them, which is, again, in this case, it's a good thing. So if a narcissist says, I don't like the way you handled this, rather than arguing back, this person says, like, way they argue a lot, rather than arguing back, it's like, okay, you don't like the way I handled something. I do. If you have something constructive that you'd like to share with me, I'm certainly willing to listen, but I have nothing further to add. Or if they say, well, you remember when you told me this and now it's this, and you're constantly lying to me. And if you're thinking, but that's not an accurate portrayal. Well, at some point, it's a matter of saying it's not an accurate portrayal. I'm just going to go ahead and proceed with who I am. And sometimes you just have to learn how to leave loose ends out there. But the key for you is rather than thinking, I've got to get this person to stop being so narcissistic, I've got to get them to appreciate who I am. Well, actually, no, you don't. It would be nice if that could happen, but no, you don't. Go ahead and know what you're dealing with. And especially if this is what shows up when conflict is there, you're dealing with a very immature person. And the last thing you want to do is to be immature right alongside, parallel with them. One of the things we do here on Team Healthy, it's like, I know the better path to go. I'm going to take the better path. If you join me, that would be absolutely wonderful. If you don't, I'm going to be me. No apologies. Okay. So yeah, when you ask, am I dealing with a narcissist, and we go through all the key ingredients of narcissism, there you have it. Yeah, this is pretty strong. And know that it's a pattern on a spectrum. I mentioned that to you before. You can be down at the 20% level, which is really really low, or you can be all the way at the 80 or 90% level, and somewhere in between. But just know that's what you are dealing with. All right, this next one is it's a variation of a question that I receive from many different people. So I'm going to continue to address this. It's about post divorce and dealing with the kids. In this particular case, we have an adult child. Okay. This person says, my ex wife was exceptionally mean and taught our only daughter, who's now in her late 20s, to hate the same people she hates. And that's what a lot of them will do. So this person goes on to say, I'd like to pull my daughter aside and tell her some stories about her mother that would give her a very, and it's all caps, a very different perspective. But I fear it would backfire greatly. Am I wrong to just leave it alone, knowing she's becoming a spitting image of her mom? Okay, this one's a tough one because here you have a situation where you were married, you share a daughter together, and now the daughter has kind of drifted away from you and is acting more and more like the dominant, overwhelming. And I'm assuming, well, when you say exceptionally mean, I'm assuming there's a pretty strong narcissistic bent, and you're over there thinking, no, we don't need this to be the case. Should I speak up and talk to the daughter who's tightly tied to the narcissistic mother? And I'm thinking this is where it defies logic. You'd like to be able to sit down with that adult daughter who's late 20s. By then, ideally they would be objective enough and say, "Hey, look, there's some things that I'm noticing here inside of our extended family way of doing things that I'm just not a party to. I don't want to argue, and I don't want to be self-absorbed. I want to see if we can have a sense of understanding and knowing each other, and just know that I think differently from you. And then let me talk with you about why that divorce happened, or some of the things that maybe you don't know. And there's some stories that I could tell you. If you had somebody who was open-minded, you could probably have a discussion like that, and then dovetail it toward, or segue off of that and turn it into a real constructive discussion about what your cleaner alternatives would be. The fact, though, that you suggest that she's becoming a spitting image of her mother, and she's learning how to hate, and then you come along and say, "Hey, there's a better way of doing things." I'm not feeling terribly optimistic about your possibilities of breaking through. Sometimes the narcissist wins. Not really. It's actually a losing proposition, but winning in the sense that they vanquish you. Sometimes the narcissist wins, and there's not a lot that you can do to change that scoreboard. I can't even begin to tell you how many cases that I've had where a person has said, I'm as God is my witness, I'm trying to be a reasonable person. I'm trying to explain things as cleanly as I can. And I'm telling you what, I'm running into a brick wall and it's not getting us anywhere good. What else can I do? And sometimes the answer is, well, sometimes you've done all you can and it still didn't work. I know this is not what people want to hear, but sometimes you have to make room for loose ends. You have to make room for incompleteness. I could speak on a personal level with various people that I've known through the years. And it's like, as best as I can, I try to be an open minded person, and it just was not reciprocated. I can talk with you about people that I've counseled with in my counseling office. They've drawn that same conclusion. I know people on a personal level who are my friends or acquaintances, and many of them will say there are these certain people that have played key roles in my life, and I can't get through to them. And so when that's the case, what you have to do is adjust your expectations according to truth as opposed to according to wishful thinking. You've heard the old saying, hope is not a good strategy. I hope I can get through. I hope it's going to be different. What we need to do is we need to take a look at hard truth. If the hard truth is that this adult daughter is not really interested in who you are, that's your hard truth. And so, probably if I were in that same boat, what I would say is, if you want to keep that relationship with your daughter, keep it shallow, keep it minimal, keep it functional, but wait for her to give you the indicators that she's really willing to go into that deeper space with you. Always let it be known, I have some thoughts and I have some ideas, and I don't think you need to just suppress everything that you feel and think. Let it be known who you are and what your distinctives are, with the idea that if maybe instead of in the late 20s, that person's in their late 30s or middle 40s or whatever, maybe some maturity will catch up, and then you'll have a deeper capacity to convey thoughts and ideas. And I have had that happen. It's actually been pretty cool when you have somebody that's in their mid 40s and they're finally able to have that necessary conversation with their now elderly parents. And I've seen that. But you're just going to have to adjust your expectations and then let time show you. In the meantime, just stay functional and maintain whatever ties you are willing to do, other than just compromising who you are completely. That's a hard one, and it's a heartbreaker when it's somebody that you want to love in a fullest way, and they're not letting you because they have been trained to hate. So adjust your expectations. Okay, now this is another one, and this comes from a really kind-hearted person. You go to that webinar that I'm doing, when the narcissist meets the people pleaser. All right, this is one that goes with that one. Okay, this person says, "Hi, Dr. C. Hello. My question to you is: my narcissistic brother was mistreated during his childhood. I've said goodbye to him this year because he totally changed his behavior toward my sister and me as of the day our mother died. A change for the worse, I might add. But I wonder, the past year has treated us he has treated us in an awful way, but in fact, he's a victim too. Should I forgive him, or is it wise to keep my distance for good? I mean, is it possible that he will change his behavior once I've validated that he's a victim from his upbringing?" Well, first, your empathy desires are just oozing out, and I deeply respect that. Don't ever let go of your empathy. Here he is. He's got his anger issues and his bitterness and his condescension. Probably, my guess, he's very stubborn and argumentative. I mean, that's written out, just kind of behind the scenes with all of that. But here you are, his sister, and you're thinking, I was a witness to a lot of this growing up, and the same stuff he had to endure. And I know that he may have had his issues that were different from mine, and my heart goes out to him. We didn't have it really easy in our home, and I want to let him know, hey, I know you're struggling and you're hurting, and I'm an insider with you, and I can talk with you about these things in a therapeutic kind of way. Would you be willing to join me? That's what this sister is trying to say. And you'd like to think that the brother, who has apparently just continued on with a strong narcissistic insensitive mindset, you'd like to think it's like, wow, I've needed a conversation like this. The sad thing is, a high percentage of narcissists are so caught up with their own deluded, self-impressed entitlement, that if you come along and say, well, there's something different that we need to tune into, it's like, what are you talking about? And he's over there thinking, well, the reason that you're different from me is because you're stupid and you don't see life the way I do. And unfortunately, it sounds to me like your brother has prioritized his own anger. He's prioritized his own self absorption to the extent that it's like, look, if I want something done, we're going to do it my way, into discussion. Got any more questions? Because I don't. And if that's the case, I think it's wonderful. Yes, he is a victim, in a sense, just as you were a victim. But you'll notice that you made some adjustments that he did not. And the bottom line is, even though he has been victimized and exposed to his own negative history, we can still grow and we can still adjust. Some choose to do that growth process. And most of you who are on the channel here with me are among those people. Others, it's like, I don't need to grow. What I need is a better set of circumstances. There's an old country song that says, I'm ready for a better class of losers. So they're constantly looking for that next better class of losers they can hang out with, and they just got this negative mindset, this negative worldview, and you come along and say, "Hey, we can do this better," and they can look at you and say, "It's like up yours. I don't care what you think." And at some point, you don't need to expose yourself to that. And at some point, that person who's acting that way toward you is and perpetuating your tension is making a point blank deliberate choice to be that way. I can promise you there are times when that person can modulate their edginess. If the somebody super important to them came along, they'd probably clean up their act at least for a while. They know how to do it, and they choose not to. And so, is it reasonable for you to just continue in your pullback mode? Probably so. And so just know what you're dealing with. And the key is to remind yourself that you don't want to be on that white horse trying to go in there and save the day and make it all okay and talk to that narcissistic person about how we can have roses when in fact they don't want to. And rather than carrying the tension of saying, but I've got to make it happen. Well, what you need to do is work on the one person you can do something with, and it's not that narcissistic person. Okay, now this next one, this is an interesting question too, and I know one that many of you have dealt with. And that this person says, how do you deal with the low self-esteem created by the narcissist due to their neglect? So apparently, this person has been around this narcissistic individual, and I don't know if it's a parent or a sibling or a partner or a work partner or someone in their social life, but they felt neglected and put down and dismissed by that individual, and then they walk away with low self-esteem, meaning they wonder, well, am I any good? Does anybody care about me when I think something, or if I have an opinion? Does it even matter? Do I matter? How do you get beyond that? And really, it kind of comes down to how do you get beyond any kind of old entrenched kind of thing. The bottom line is we need to remind ourselves, just as I've been doing with these other questions, a person who's willing to repeatedly junk you, a person who's willing to repeatedly let you know how you have no worth, is someone who is not well established in basic psychology. You don't start out by motivating people in a growth direction by insulting them left and right. This is somebody who is a difficult person. Remind yourself, I don't have to take my cues from you. And you want to learn how to build from the inside out, not the outside in. Okay. Now, one of the things that I like to do is it's like, well, can you come up with an alternative way of thinking? This person says you have no reason to esteem yourself. Well, what do you think? What does a healthy person look like, and what can you zero in on that will help you know that you're leaning into that and living according to healthy self-esteem? One of the things that I like to put people onto is what we call the OCEAN acronym, the OCEAN description of the healthy way of life, and it's all research based. And I won't go deep into it, but the people started out trying to figure out what a healthy personality is like, and they came up with things. Did a lot of testing. They came up with 16 characteristics. It was called the 16 PF, 16 personality factors, and then over time they narrowed it down to five characteristics. That's the OCEAN acronym, and I'm going to tell you about that in just a second. And then they've narrowed it down to one. OCEAN stands for OCEAN. O is openness. C is conscientiousness. E is extroversion, and by that I mean you're willing to engage with people, even if you have an introverted side. You can still engage with others. A is agreeableness. N is neuroticism. That's the only one that's spoken in the negative direction. If you're a healthy person, you'll have those four characteristics and a lack of neuroticism. In other words, there's a calmness and steadiness. And in fact, after the live feed here, go look up the top five traits of a healthy personality, OCEA, and just put that in. I promise you, it'll pop up. They have tests and a checklist and all for you. In other words, familiarize yourself with what research tells us is a healthy personality. and build your beliefs about who you are, not upon some hard, difficult, neurotic narcissist. Don't build your self-esteem on what that person says. Build your self-esteem on what good research says, and what common sense says, and what character and dignity says. And ultimately, if it's consistent with a loving and a good and respectful way of life, you're probably on to something really good. And then let your beliefs reflect that. And if you have this strain and tension and all, that's not love, that's not decency, that's not respect. So you've been trained wrongly. And so you can exchange your old thoughts that you used to prioritize and give yourself new thoughts. And that's why I consistently tell folks here, we need to be lifelong learners. I just turned 69 years old. I got one more year before I really hit it old. But whether I'm 70 or 80 or beyond, it's like I don't want to quit learning. I want to keep tuning in. So anyway, I'm hoping that that's something that you can prioritize. Let me take that down. Okay, and that's something that you can learn and claim for yourself. So look up the OCEAN acronym. Okay. Um, okay. This is another interesting question that I know many of you have wondered about, and that is plain and simple. What if you're just not happy after you've left a narcissist? So you have a person that says, whether it's in marriage or friendship or work or extended family, and it's like, you know what? I've got to get away. And so you do it. You execute that plan and you get away. And then in the end, it's like, this didn't make me happy. What's that all about? And see, this is part of that ongoing tension. The way I look at it is the person who's not happy in the aftermath of narcissism is someone who is operating with a certain amount of idealism, and that's good up to a point. Now, narcissism itself is built upon unsustainable idealism. They have this wonderful idea of how things are supposed to be, and it's going to make them feel good. Well, the rest of us can have our idealism too, but we also want to make sure that it's grounded in reality. And reality tells us that we have a broken world. That I don't know a single person that can say, well, I'll tell you what, all through my life, everything is unfolded exactly the way I wanted. It's been, just a bed of roses. It's been wonderful. It's been terrific. Every person has pain, and every person has some sort of struggle. And so when you walk away from the narcissist, it doesn't mean that you're feeling great. What it is it's like, well, that's a chapter in my life that did not play out well. In other words, it created its form of pain, and I'm hurting. Well, when that happens, allow yourself to have the grief. It's reasonable to say, yeah, some things are painful. Now, the key is don't let that be the final word. I'm hoping that even as you allow for a certain amount of loose endedness between you and that person you had to walk away from, a certain amount of disappointment, I'm hoping you can say, therefore, I'm going to make sure that I shore up the things that in me that are the better alternative. And I'm just committing myself to those traits even more than ever before. And then I'm also hoping you can seek out people who do know how to love you and accept you and respect you in a way that you honestly deserve. And so, how do you get beyond the self esteem? Listen to the message that's there. When the narcissist is saying, you're no good, the message is, I have to be superior over somebody and you're it. And so remind yourself they're operating with their own self serving agenda. And those negative messages are not about you. You happen to be a player on the stage, and narcissists can try to pick up on what they deem to be your vulnerable spots. And so, sure enough, you've got your imperfections or just your distinctions. But don't let that person who's deeply troubled be the one who says, let me explain to you how you're supposed to esteem yourself. And it's not very good. Well, it's not very good to them because they're not very objective. Go back to my comments about the false self. They perpetuate tension in you because they can't come to terms with their own tension, but they just tell themselves lies, and then they're okay. And so a lot part of that is they tell you lies about who you are. And so try to remember who and what you're dealing with. Okay, another question here. This is from an empath. This person says, is it common to become aggressive after years of being an empath dealing with a narcissist? Because sometimes I'm feeling like I'm becoming an animal after having years of defending my real self. Okay, this is a tough one. So here you have somebody, and I'm going to assume that this person has a history of thinking, I really want to treat people well. But apparently, there's been lots of repetition with that narcissistic person. We talk about them perpetuating tension, and they keep coming back. There's nothing good about you. Why do you think that way? And they argue with you. And so, for a while, particularly if you have that strong empathic tendency, for a while, a person can think, I don't want to get into it. I don't want to. I don't want to let them, pull me under. And so you try to be the better person, but along the way, you can suppress much of your own natural emotion, and you can only do it so long and for to a certain extent before finally you blow. And you hold it in, you hold it in, you hold it in, and finally it's like, forget this. I don't like this. And so part of your having been an empath and then turning into a much more angry person where you say, I feel like I'm turning into an animal, it has to do with your suppression. Okay, take it a little bit further. It also implies then we need to figure out how you're going to manage your anger more cleanly. There are some times when your anger can be good and healthy, in your sense of standing up for yourself and saying, "I want to be treated well. I want to be shown respect." That's a healthy form of anger, and so part of you. Having had a history of being an empath, being dysregulated in tension, with that narcissist who brings all their anger toward you and then you responding in anger, part of it has to do with pulling back and becoming objective. And that's what we would do in therapy all the time. What's right about what the narcissist is saying, what's not right. And you're going to find there's quite a bit of discrepancy there. How have you harmed your own emotional stability by suppressing way too much? How have you harmed your own emotional stability by responding in kind to someone who was inappropriate? And then what does clean assertiveness look like? What does standing up for yourself look like? How do you manage yourself as a distinct person? And when you're required to defend yourself, what would happen if you didn't defend and you just lived into your own good common sense? And you want to get used to the idea of saying, I get to decide those things. Going back to a comment I made with a couple of questions ago, one of the best ways to determine how narcissistic a person is watch how they manage conflict. And I'm hoping you can decide, well, when I'm in conflict, I'm not going to go in and match pitch with this tense, dysregulated person. I have my own style. And I'm committed to it, and I'm going to do the very best that I can, not to let them trigger me, but for me to stay steady. And then, frankly, one of the things you'll need to do when you in order to go back and reclaim that softer and that more tender side of you is to get away from somebody who is constantly poking you in the ribs with a stick. uh, if you're constantly being kicked in the shins and poked in the ribs, eventually you're going to blow and say, quit it, I don't like it. Okay, get away. You can have a good attitude, but get away from that person who's poking you in the ribs. And so there's much going on there, but it's a matter of you getting your reorientation about who you want to be, especially in managing your anger and conflict, and then what it means to have firm boundaries and calm firmness and calm steadiness, those kind of things. That's why guys like me, it's why I'm out here trying to coach you up and letting it be known there is a different way of doing things. Are you committed to it? Are you willing to go there? Another person, we talk about the ongoing tension that is there, having been with a narcissist. This person says, how do I deal with my own anxiety after the discard? Okay. So this person has been with someone who has apparently treated them wrongly. That narcissistic individual says, away with you. I don't care. And now this person is saying, yeah, now I've just got all this anxiety and tension. And I wondered how many of you can cite moments where you're okay and then you're reminded of something from the past, or you see that person, or you have a reason to have to interact with that individual again, and the anxiety starts kicking in and you start feeling tense and agitated. There are three key components that I would work with people who would have anxiety relative to a difficult person. One is the element of control, two is the element of anger, and three is the element of fear. Anxiety tends to be a conglomeration of those three issues: control, anger, and fear. When I say control, the anxious person has felt controlled and they're wishing to be back in control. And one of the things I teach there is the best way to be in control is to quit trying to control everybody else. That's what the narcissist wants. And so you need to reorient your mindset there. And then a second thing, when we talk about anxiety, a lot of folks say, "No, I said I'm anxious. I didn't say I'm angry." It's like, well, actually, when you're in your anxiety, there's an irritability and an annoyance and agitation that tends to go along with that. That's part of your anger system. And so, like that last question I mentioned, you want to learn how to manage your anger. What is it that I need to do to stand up for myself better? When do I need to release it? What are my higher priorities? And you can have somebody walk you through that. And then the fear, when you're looking at your own anxiety, notice how easily you defend yourself and you feel like you have to justify and rationalize why it's okay for you to be you, and you dread people saying negative things. You're going to need to learn how to trust yourself more. I don't have to defend myself constantly, and I don't have to justify and give rationalizations as to why it's reasonable for me to be me. And I'm giving you a very, very short Reader's Digest version of this, but you're going to need to zero in on those three issues of control, anger, and fear. And that's part of what can be done in therapy. That can be done through your reading and through watching videos such as this. And so when you ask, how do I deal with my anxiety? Learn how to break it down and then learn how to monitor your own progressions separate and distinct from the pronouncements of a very dysregulated person. Okay. Uh, okay. Let's go with one more. Okay. This person, it's a little bit of a long one, but let's see if we can get into this. This person says there was a defining moment that started lifting the fog for me a few years back, and I slowly found my voice again. And from that time forward, I have been called out I have called out the bad behavior as I see it. As you can imagine, I've been public enemy number one ever since. I'm repeatedly told that I'm the one who's being judgmental and mean and crude. And cognitively, I can reason this out, but I can't seem to find the self-esteem within me to silence that inner ruminating voice. Can you please advise me about how to break this cycle and build better healthy inner dialogue? Okay, so this here's someone that said, I've learned how to call BS on people now, and I do. And so the one thing that I want to just focus in on, this person says, I'm now the one after I call them out who's being told that I'm judgmental and critical and mean and rude. Stop right there. Uh, be willing to hear that kind of feedback. Now, the reason I say that is narcissists do not hear feedback. If you say, "Hey, you're being critical and rude," a narcissist will summarily say, "That's not the case," or "You're the one that did it." They do victim shaming or whatever. And if someone says, "Well, I think you're being too judgmental and mean and rude," then one of the ways for you to know that you're at a better place is to say, I know that's your perception. I'm willing to hear once why you have drawn that conclusion." And let them say whatever they want to say. In other words, show yourself to be willing to receive input. And then as you consider it, if it's accurate, then adjust. But if it's like, no, you missed it, you misinterpreted me, you don't have to defend yourself. And you don't have to explain, no, here's what you got wrong and here's what's right instead. Just say, well, okay, you've told me what you think. Now, I still hold to my perceptions, and I'm still calling out what I believe is wrong. I still plan on taking my own separate initiatives. And so you want to be the kind of person that says, I'll listen. And if there are some things that somebody is saying about me that seem to be less than flattering, maybe I'll learn something. But it may be that as I hear their rationale, I'm going to find out it says a whole lot more about their selfish agenda and their entitlement than it does about me. And if that's the case, then I'll move forward with that understanding intact. So, do you understand what I'm hoping is narcissists can, in fact, perpetuate tension in you. But when you realize maybe I can't change how they think about me, but what I can do is I can reorient it what I think about me. When you're able to approach these individuals with that kind of mindset intact, that's how the tension that they want to stay on the inside of you in perpetuity doesn't have to be the case. You can be on Team Healthy, and you can be that person of peace that I repeatedly encourage toward you. So I hope this gives you some good food for thought. And again, if you have questions, put them down underneath the in the comments section, and I'll pick up on more. And same time next week, we're going to pick up on it. Those of you who are watching on video delay, I'm glad that you were able to pick up on it. And share this with other individuals, and do the subscribe like thing. You know how that drill goes. And just keep in mind the webinar that we have coming up about the people pleaser and the narcissist. And I will see you next time. I truly appreciate you letting me be on your journey with you. Team Healthy, stay who you are, and I'll continue on with you. I'll see you next week.